Hello everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to set up a camera and pose your character and get it ready to have the first image of your character in a pose. So let's get it started. So I have opened my Maya scene, the one that I have the Smooth Mesh character in it, as you can see here. And this is the one that you want to use for posing, right? You did all those nice jobs smoothing the meshes that you needed to give your character the look that you wanted for it, and now you're gonna work with that scene. So let's start with some with some cleanups and also some of the best practices that we can do before we start, so we can always go back and start not from the beginning if something went wrong, right? So the first thing that you want to do is you want to check that your character is in a resting pose. Like if it's a biped, it needs to be in a T pose. If it's like a bird, any character that it is, it needs to be in its resting pose, its neutral pose, okay? And when it is in the neutral pose, the hierarchy needs to be with the groups, like so. You can always go and select the groups and select the groups and move your character. And I can see now that my character, I haven't set the pivot point for my character because everything is at here for the groups, but that's fine. I can fix it later. So the same thing, if you came over here and saw that, oh, I didn't set the pivot point for the groups, that's a good moment to start fixing that, okay? Also, the most important thing, everything needs to be at showing. If you go to channel box, okay, so if you click on this icon, it's going to bring you to the channel box, okay? So you need to check so that everything has this default value, the groups and also the objects, okay? They all should show like 0, 0 for translation and rotation and 1 for scale, right? If it is not like this, you need to select the whole thing and just freeze transformation in the resting pose. And we have went through this, but I can just show that to you how to do it again, because I want to show you how to add that command line to your custom shelf. So to freeze transformation and everything, you need to select everything in the outliner. So to open up the group and open all the subgroups that it has, you can just hold down Shift and click on the plus sign that is showing up in the outliner next to that group, and then everything is going to be opened up, okay? As you do so, you can just select on the top group and then shift select on the last object, and now everything is selected, and you can go to modify and freeze transformation, okay? The other way to do it is to select this group and then do the command for selecting everything that is in there. And we remember that the command is select space dash high, right? So I'm gonna type in the Mel script here, select space dash high, and then hit enter, and everything is selected, okay? So there's one way to add this command to your shelf. If you open up this little cutie icon here, this is the text editor, not text editor, I think it's script editor or something in Maya, okay? So if you click on it, it's going to show the commands, like whenever you click or run some tool and do whatever thing, the command line is going to show up here. Like I just did this select high, right? Which is for selecting the hierarchy. So what you can do is you can just select the whole line for this command and just middle click, drag it to the shelf, to your custom shelf, and then it's going to stay there. You can just click on it next time and you don't have to type it in, right? So I'm going to do the same thing. So this is the last command that I did, so it's up there, and then I'm going to just click and drag to select it, okay? Then I'm gonna middle click and just drag it to the shelf, right? And it's gonna say save a script to shelf. As type, you're gonna say Mel, because this is a script, okay? So I'm gonna say Mel. It's gonna just go up here showing as this icon. So you can see that now if I wanna run this command for selecting everything, I can just click on the top hierarchy level that I wanna be selected, and then just click on this. This is gonna run the same command, right? Okay, so that is cool, I think, right? So these are the two ways that you can select everything from the scene and then do freeze transformation if you see that the channels are showing numbers here, right? So once you're done with that, and like me, if you have seen that, oh, I haven't set up the pivot point for the groups, you should go ahead and do that. And the next thing you want to do is to set up a project. So if you have already done so and you're working inside a project, you always open up Maya and set your project, you're fine. If you haven't done so already, you should do it now, because as we start doing renders, it is really important that your Maya scenes are living inside a project and you set your project, because for example, when later we want to start with rendering with RenderMan, it's gonna create a folder and puts like your images, everything in there, and if you haven't set up the project, then you're gonna have a hard time, like, where is my RenderMan folder, where are my images? So it's good to set up your projects now. So I have already created a project which is called you can see it in a while, set project. So this is my LE Basic Robot project. You can see that there is a workspace.mel in it. So this is my project folder. I'm just gonna click on it. I'm not gonna go in, I'm just gonna click on it and say set project, okay? So if you haven't created a project for your files, you can just go ahead and do project window, click new, and create a project. Then you need to go in and set the projects, okay? So now that I have set the project, it's time to save this file, which is like, it's gonna be my source file. Like whenever I wanna do, for example, let's say a new pose, if I wanna start shading, this is the source file for my character, right? It's in the T-pose, everything is set to 0. I've done the smooth mesh preview, it's all set. So I want to make sure that I never lose this, right? So I'm going to go ahead and save it in a place that I can find it later. So let's say File, Save Scene As, and then I'm going to go in, let's see, I'm going to decide I want to put it in the assets, because this is a really good asset, okay? So I'm just going to rename this to Robot Smooth Mesh and 0, let's say, how do I name it to remember this? So I'm gonna call this, I'm gonna let the 07 be there, because then I'm gonna know which kind of, where when I created this. I'm just gonna call this source for pose, or whatever name that is like convenient for you. And I'm gonna let the 01 be there too, because it's me, I always end up having like a couple of source files. So in the assets, I'm just gonna save it here, because this is my asset. You can choose it, you can choose to save it wherever, but make sure you save it in some place that you don't have to go in and dig to find it, right? Like if you want to save it in your scene folder, make sure you create a new folder and just call it important files or something like that. Important, and just save it here, okay? It doesn't matter where you save it, it's important that you remember where you save it, okay? So now that I have saved this file, I know I can always go and grab it. So I'm gonna save it. I'm not gonna work on top of the source file that I created, because that's my source file. It needs to be untouched. So I'm just gonna go ahead and create again, save it again. Save as, not in the asset this time. I'm just gonna go into the scenes, and I'm just gonna call this one 08. Just gonna get rid of the robot whatever. I'm just gonna call this pose. This is gonna be the first pose. I'm just gonna save it here. Okay. So everything is almost ready, and so everything is ready for posing, although well, my character pivot point for the groups are not there, but I'm not gonna fix it now, but you have to fix it if you want to pose your character, right? You know that. So the next thing I want to do is, so when you pose your character, it's good to have a background, right? If you agree, it's gonna be in a void space if it's like this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna create like half a room or something like that for this character. So to do so, you can just go ahead and go to Poly Modeling Shelf and create a plane. Okay, so a plane is created. I'm just gonna hit R to scale it up. Gonna scale it up. I don't want it to be really tight and close to the character, so I'm just gonna scale it up. And then what I'm gonna do, as I said, I want to create like a half a room or something. So I'm just gonna sorry, just gonna select these set of edges that are around the plane. I need some water. Here we go. So I'm just gonna select all the edges that are around here, and I'm gonna extrude them up to create like half a room. Okay, so I'm gonna click on this edge and shift double click on this edge, so all these edges are selected. And then I'm gonna do shift right click, extrude edge, and then I'm gonna just push it up. And because later I wanna like smooth this mesh, I wanna add more geometry to the part that I just extruded. So I'm just gonna add a couple of divisions here. So I'm using this, what do you call it? The gadget that this extrude tool has brought up, and I'm just gonna click and drag so it adds a couple of subdivisions to the walls, right? So this is gonna be the half room that I wanna have my character in. And why the half room? Because you don't wanna just put it in a box, right? Then it's gonna be hard. You don't have so much space to, your camera needs to be inside the room. You cannot get far away from your character. So that's why we create half a room, okay? Now that I created it, I can just hit 3. You can see that it smooths the edges, right? And let's just get rid of this wireframe unshaded preview like this. Okay, so that's better. Later I can just go in and like scale the room up, or do whatever thing that I want to do, make it closer to the character, something like this. It all depends to the view that you later choose for your render camera, right? So now that I created this background, I'm just gonna rename this. Let's first delete history on it so we get rid of all the junk here, and then I'm gonna rename this to DG1 in case I duplicated it. And when you rename it in the outliner, you can see that the in the attribute editor everything is renamed, which is nice, and that's what we want. Then I'm gonna just put it into a display layer, right? So I'm just gonna put this background in the display layer because I want to be able to turn it on and off. So it's almost ready, right? So the next thing would be, let's just do the next thing in the next video because I don't want this tutorial to get too long. So we did the house cleaning and saving the files and everything for this scene. Just make sure you save it like this. And in the next video, I'm going to talk about cameras and how to set them and get this character to pose.